Okay, now we're going over the appendicular skeleton. Okay, so screen. Again, the appendicular skeleton refers to arms and legs and the girdles which hook them into the body. Okay, all right. So without further ado, okay. You have a pectoral girdle and a pelvic girdle. So pectoral girdle is going to be attaching the upper limbs, pelvic girdle, the lower limbs. Okay, so the upper limbs and lower limbs differ in function, but they share the same structural plan. What that means is like if you look at like a four-legged animal, the four limbs of the animal don't really differ all that much. Okay, but since humans are different, we stand on 2 feet instead of four, our upper limbs are now better adapted to moving around. And so we gain flexibility, but we lose support, okay? So, not many of us can walk across the room with our hands and stuff like that, okay? Okay, so let's talk about the pectoral girdle. The pectoral girdle consists of two bones, the clavicle and the scapula. Okay, the pectoral girdle allows great amount of flexibility, but very little support. Okay, and speaking firsthand, I can tell you it's rather easy to separate your shoulder. Okay, I've done it before. Just playing basketball. I jumped. I got my legs taken out from under me in midair, landed on my shoulder, joint popped out. Okay, I had to go to the hospital and pop it back in. Okay, it hurt like hell, but it was rather easy to pop out, and therefore it was rather easy to pop back in. I just had to do physical therapy to get my shoulder back in place and stuff like that. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, again, the mobility of the pectoral girdle. The clavicle, only the clavicle actually articulates to the axial skeleton, not the scapula. The scapula or shoulder blade, it's actually like floating on your back. It's not actually physically attached to any part. Okay, the only part that attaches to your skeleton, to your axial skeleton, is this joint right here where the clavicle meets the manubrium. Okay, all right, so here's the shoulder joint. Okay, you'll see this part in more detail, but that is a very superficial joint. Okay, oops, and then pause where I'm supposed to. All right. Okay, that is your shoulder right there. Okay. Okay, so here is the clavicle. This is the actual joint where your arm fits in to the axial skeleton. That's it. Okay. All right. Clavicles. Okay. The clavicle is a really simple bone. It looks like a little key. Okay. A skeleton key. So that's why it's called clavicle. Clave is key. Okay. So the sternal end articulates with the manubrium, the acromial end attaches to the scapula. So the acromial end is right there, sternal end is right there. Okay, the acromial end, okay, this is the acromion that attaches to something called the acromion on the clavicle, or on the scapula, sorry. The sternal end obviously attaches to the sternum. Okay, the way I tell the difference, the acromial end is flat. Okay, the sternal end is more rounded. Okay, okay, that's the purpose of the clavicle. Really, is a really simple thing. It prevents. Okay, it's your collarbone. It basically prevents your arm from like dropping forward. And if you ever break your clavicle, one of the most common things that happen to your arm hops forward. Okay. Okay. Scapula is located on the dorsal surface of the rib cage. It has three triangles. Triangle has three sides. So they have three borders: the superior border, the medial border, okay, and then lateral border. You should know what these terms mean by now. Okay. So the other term for medial border is vertebral because it's next to the vertebrae. The lateral is on the lateral side, and it's also called axillary because that's where your armpit is. Okay, and it has three angles. Okay. Okay. All right. Superior angle, inferior angle, lateral angle. Okay. All right. So there's a lot of bits and pieces of the scapula because that's a really important short bone because it basically has a bunch of muscles which control your arm movements. Arm movements are really important. Okay. So here, let's start from the back. This is the back of the scapula. So I'm looking at this person will be facing. If you're looking at the screen, this person will be in front of you. Okay. So first thing to notice, there's a big sharp thing sticking up. Big sharp thing sticking up is a spine. So the spine of the scapula or the spinous process of the scapula. Either they mean the same thing. Okay. At the very end of the spine is the acromion. That is where the clavicle actually attaches. Okay. Now we have two. Okay. Fossas. So trough. Okay. So the spine separates this area, this big piece, into two locations, top and bottom. Okay, so the top is above the spine, above is supra, so supraspinous fossa, the fossa above the spine. This, okay, is under the spine, so infraspinous fossa. Okay, there is one more big fossa, and that you can see here. Okay, now we're looking at, oops, it from this angle. We're looking at, you'll be looking at the person. Okay, looking through the person right now. Okay, so that fossa is the subscapular fossa. Okay, all right, now all the other things. Okay, there's a little indentation right there. Okay, that indentation is a notch suprascapular notch. Okay, notch above the scapula. Okay, there is a little hook thing right there. That little hook is called the coracoid process. A lot of muscles in the, see how it sticks out in front? A lot of the muscles in the upper arm, so arm, not forearm, arm, attaches to that little hook, in particular your biceps. Okay. Okay. Last thing I want to show you is this thing from the side. Okay, and this thing right here. Okay, and that is the glenoid cavity. Okay, it's either called a glenoid cavity or glenoid fossa. They both mean the same thing. Okay, the important term is glenoid. Okay. Okay. I'll go back. The next video will be the PAL video where I show you the bone and we rotate it and look at it. Okay. Okay. The upper limb, okay, has 30 bones. Okay. The bones are grouped into the arm, forearm, and hand. Remember, arm, forearm, hand. Okay. Don't screw it up. Okay. Arm is the region of the upper limb between the shoulder and elbow. Okay, humerus is the only bone in the arm. Okay, it's the longest and strongest bone in the upper limb. Okay, so Let's take a closer look at the humerus. Okay, so let's start with the top. Okay, the proximal epiphysis. Okay, so the humerus, like a lot of bones, have a head. Okay, the head is usually round, so that's the head of the humerus. Okay, behind the head is always a neck. If there's a head, there's going to be a neck. Okay, the humerus is the only bone with two necks. One is the real neck, the anatomical neck. The anatomical neck is going to circle, okay, the humerus right there. Okay, the surgical neck will be right around this bottom part right here. I think they show it here in the next slide, right there. And the reasons why it's called a surgical neck is because that's where your humerus usually breaks. Like this big piece stays with the shoulder. This is where you break the arm, okay? When you take a hard fall like that. So surgical neck. Okay, so now look on the other side, okay? Here, okay, so this is the medial side, this is the lateral side. The lateral proximal epiphysis has two big bumps, a greater tubercle and a lesser tubercle, okay? Okay, so if you start off in an anatomical position, you rotate your shoulder out, so you can kind of see my arm here. If I rotate my shoulder up, I will feel bump, groove, bump. Okay, that bump, groove, bump is lesser tubercle. Okay, the groove, which is the intertubercular sulcus, and then the greater tubercle. Okay. Okay, so hopefully that makes it clear. All right, moving on down to the middle. Okay, there is another indentation right there. Okay, that indentation is called a deltoid tuberosity. Okay. Okay, that is the deltoid tuberosity. You have this, your shoulder muscle is called a deltoid. Okay, it inserts right there. It's called deltoid tuberosity. The more muscle the shoulder has, okay, the bigger the bump on the deltoid tuberosity. Okay, so there's not much in the middle of the bone. On the other end, okay, on the distal end is where you see a lot of stuff actually. Okay, and that's where your shoulder, that's where your elbow is. Okay. Okay, so this is the anterior view. Okay, the anterior view, you can see a couple of things. Okay, you see the okay, so condyle is this curved surface right there. Okay, a condyle is a curved surface. An epicondyle, epi means above, is that big bump of bone above the condyle. Okay. Okay. This right here is called a trochlea. Trochlea means pulley. And you can see on your elbow, there's a pulley system right there. Okay. Okay. This side is where the radius will attach, the head of the radius. Head is capital, so capitulum is where the head attaches. And that head is the head of the humerus. Okay. This trochlea will be actually the ulnar. Okay. Okay, so the back. Okay, the back, there is this big, huge hole right there. Big, huge fossa. That big, huge fossa is the olecranon. Okay, remember the elbow is the olecranal area. The back of the elbow is the olecranal area. that's because it has the olecranon. The olecranon is the olecranon fossa plus the actual thing that fits in called the olecranon. Okay? Okay, and this is the trochlea. So let me show you how the elbow works, and then we'll go back to the rest of this stuff. Okay, so here you can see the front of the elbow. Okay. Okay. This sharp point here is called the coronoid process of the ulnar. The coronoid process of the ulnar will, when you flex your forearm, the coronoid process of the ulnar will fit into the coronoid process or fossa. Okay, the coronoid process will fit into the fossa. Okay. Now you see on the other side, your olecranon is right here, and your olecranon fits into the olecranon fossa. Okay, when your arm is fully extended, okay, your olecranon fits into the olecranon fossa. When your arm is fully flexed, the coronoid process fits into the coronoid fossa. Okay. Okay. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. The forearm is formed from the radius and ulnar. Okay. So the way the forearms work, okay, arms across right here. Let me stand up and show you. Okay, you have your thumb on the side and your pinky on this side. This, okay, is the radius. This is the ulnar. The radius and ulnar are about equal in size. The ulnar is slightly bigger than the radius, but not much. Okay. Okay. So here is the elbow joint. Okay. Okay. That's the front of the elbow. Okay. Okay. So the radius and ulnar are actually attached to each other in two places. Okay. One is proximal near the wrist. Okay, and that's the proximal radial ulnar joint. One's distal near the elbow, and that's the distal radial ulnar joint. Okay. Okay. In the anatomical position, the radius is lateral and ulnar medial. Okay. The way I automatically think about it. Okay. Well, I take my pulse. Oh, okay. My heart's beating rather quick from all the coffee I'm drinking. When I take my pulse, I'm taking the radial pulse. So my fingers, okay, if you take your pulse, your fingers are on your radius. Okay. 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 That being said, these two bones are not equal to each other in terms of what they do. The radius controls the wrist. Okay. The ulnar controls the elbow. Okay. Like they both play a minor role on the other side of it. So the ulnar plays a little bit role on the wrist. The radius plays a little bit of role on the elbow, but really is ulnar, elbow, radius, wrist. Okay. Okay. So the major landmarks of the ulnar, I already mentioned the olecranon. Okay. Okay. So that is the olecranon right there. In the middle, there's this groove. That groove is called a trochlear notch. Okay. If you see, there's another indentation right there where the head of the humerus actually fits in, and that's called the radial notch. Okay, it fits in the head of the humerus. Okay. Okay. So let's see. Large coronoid process. I already mentioned that one. And then the ulnar styloid process. The ulnar styloid process is another sharp pointing thing. So on the radius, you can actually palpate this, or the ulnar styloid process, you palpate this on the pinky side of your forearm near the wrist. Okay, it's that big bump. Okay, ulnar styloid process is right there. Okay. Okay. So here you can see this is a much better shot of the elbow. The olecranon is here, so the point of your elbow is actually the olecranon. Okay. And then here you have the trochlear notch. And then here you have the coronoid process. You have the radial notch right here. Okay. Okay. So ulnar styloid process right there. Okay. You'll see like the ulnar is much bigger at the elbow. The radius is much bigger at the wrist. Okay. Okay. The radius, the superior surface of the head or radius articulates with the capitulum. Okay. So medially, the head or radius articulates with the radial notch. So the radial notch is curved. So when I actually rotate my forearm, okay, this is, your wrist doesn't really rotate. What you rotate actually is your forearm, not your wrist. Okay, so when I do this, I'm actually rotating the radius around the radial notch on the ulnar. Okay. Okay. So when I rotate my wrist, the term is rotation of the wrist. The reality is I'm rotating my radius. Okay. Okay. So head, neck, radial tuberosity, radial styloid process. Okay. So head, right? So head of the radius. Underneath the head is always the neck. So this narrow region is the neck. And then this bump right here is the radial tuberosity. Okay. All right. Okay, next part. So now we cover the wrist. Okay, so the head consists of the carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. Okay, okay. So let's talk about the carpus, the true wrist. Okay, so there are 8 bones in the wrist. Okay, they're formed into irregular rows. Okay, so you have a proximal row and you have a distal row. The bones in the proximal row, scaphoid, lunate, quadrilateral, falciform. The distal row, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hamate. The mnemonic they give you, so Sally left the party to take carbon home. So it goes proximal from thumb to pinky, and then distal from thumb to pinky. Okay, this will give you a better mnemonic. It's share screen. Okay, this mnemonic is slightly dirtier, so some of you might be happier, but I'll explain why I like it more. Okay, scared lovers try positions that they can't handle. Okay, so scaphoid, lunate, triclateral, pisiform, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hamate. Okay, so make sure you use, and you can use this mnemonic or not. The reason why I like this one better, one is dirtier, two, the words actually sound closer to actual words of the bones. So like scared and scaphoid, lovers and lunate, they're actually closer to the actual words. Okay. All right. Okay. So here you can see them all here. Okay. Scaphoid, lunate, triclateral, pisiform, and second row, trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, hamate. Okay. You also see them from the back. Okay. Okay. The metacarpals. Okay. Metacarpals radiate distally from the wrist. Okay. So metacarpals. So metacarpals are, so here are the metacarpals. Okay. The metacarpals are in the palm of the hand. I know they look like finger bones, but they're not. Okay, they're actually bones in the palm of your hand. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice that these are actually written in Roman numerals. Okay, if you don't know the Roman numerals, learn them. Okay, at least to 12, because there are 12 cranial nerves. They're also written in Roman numerals. So you, if I ask you for this bone, the name of the bone is metacarpal 1. Okay, the name of this bone, metacarpal 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thumb is 1, pinky is 5. Okay, all right. The phalanxes, the phalanges. Okay. Okay, so phalanges are fingers. Okay, so you have 14 bones. You have 2 in the thumb, okay, and then you have 3 in each of the fingers. Okay, now, first thing, the singular of phalanges is not phalange. Okay, it's phalanx. Okay, do not screw that up. Okay, an individual finger bone is called a phalanx. Okay, so a phalanx, you have any of them. Okay, so you have proximal. Okay, the first row is proximal, the second row is middle, and the third row is distal. Okay, so proximal phalanx 2, proximal phalanx 3, middle phalanx 3, distal phalanx 2. Okay, so your thumb is special. Your thumb, because there's only 2 bones, there's only a proximal and a distal. There's no middle. Okay, so proximal phalanx 1, distal phalanx 1. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm gonna stop this right there. I'm gonna stop this presentation right here, and then we can go. Next presentation will be about the hip and legs. Okay.